All right. Good evening, everyone. We just want to welcome you to our live stream tonight. We have another pre recorded message from one of our brothers that's taking part in our revival this week. And so we have Brother Eddie Epler who is going to be bringing us the word tonight. And again, if they reference something that happened, a couple days ago, or, they don't really know anything, ahead of time, like tonight, or what's going on tonight. We just want to let you guys know this is a pre-recorded message, but we're airing it live. All right, and so get your Bibles, get your stuff around, and I'm gonna give you like 20 seconds. But other than that, just continue to pray for our church, pray for our church family. Do what you guys got to do to be able to get the word out that we need prayer right now for a lot of people and everybody that won't be able to be together. And if maybe they're reuniting and it's going to be extra special, we just want that to be continue through Christmas. So again, just prayers for everybody that's affected by COVID, whether that's physical, spiritual, mental, all that type of stuff. I just want to pray for them. And so, gonna hand it over to my brother here, Eddie Epler. He's east side of Oklahoma. So I will get that started.
Yepler. I'm a Pawnee Indian from Pawnee, Oklahoma. I was born and raised in Pawnee. I'm a police officer. I've been a police officer for 25 years. I'm actually working in Muskogee, Oklahoma at this time. Brother Junior had asked me to take part in this Christmas revival, and I want to thank him for giving me the opportunity to share a message with you like this. And he said to make sure that it's Christmas related. So it got me thinking of past Christmases that I was part of with my family, and it made me remember Christmases with my grandmother Myra. That also brought another memory up of my grandmother Myra and her sister Emma and my mother Rebecca. They made sure that I attended revivals with them at a young age, and I don't know how many times we sat under a tent outside and listened to the preachers, and how many church doors we walked through when I was young. But they made sure I was there. I got to listen to a lot of powerful sermons, and was there when they would pray also. And there were some strong prayers, and I always had questions, I didn't ask my mother about those prayers, but I would ask my grandmother. And I'd say, can you tell me why the preacher prayed like this, or why he prayed like that? And an example is one of the preachers, when they would pray, they would pray for their kids, but their kids were like 12 and 14 years old. And he'd pray for them, and then he said, I want to pray for their children that they're going to have, so he'd offer a prayer for those kids there. And that's what I asked my grandmother is, why would he pray for them? And, they're not here yet. And she said, you need to pray for that next generation as they come up, and offer those prayers up. So God knows that there's a prayer for your generations that are behind you. So she explained it like that, and it sank in. You used to hear that all the time as I was growing up. Those men would stand up and they'd pray like that, and they've gotten away from that now. You don't hear that anymore of someone praying for that next generation and praying to God that He'll pull them and call them, and that can use them in their life when they get older. And God, He knows who they are. He knows their name already. He knows if they're going to be a male or female. Your kids. He knows who their kids are going to be already. He knows the plan for their life already. Just like in this year, He knew in 2020 that we were going to go through this pandemic, this coronavirus, and He knew that. There's no surprising Him. So at 9 years old, my mother had taken me to a revival in Pawnee, Oklahoma, and it was on the reserve there, close to the Pawnee Indian Hospital. And we walked in there, and that first night I felt something pulling at me, and I didn't know what it was. So that second night we went, and it was a stronger pull, like it was calling me. Something was calling me. And we got home after the services that night, and I talked to my sister, Lozana, and I said, did you feel something when that preacher was talking? And she said, yeah, I felt something. And I don't know what it was. And I said, I did too, but I sure don't know. So we went there on that third night, and as we were sitting there listening to that sermon, and the next thing I know, they were calling for the invitation, and before I knew it, I stood up, and I walked down that aisle, and I turned my life over to Jesus Christ and accepted it in my heart as my Lord and Savior. So, at an early age, I knew right from wrong, because I felt the Holy Spirit enter into my body like that. And, it was a wonderful feeling. There for 2 to 3 days, I felt different. It was a good feeling, and it was a good experience. So at a young age, I knew right from wrong. Tonight, I want to share a couple of scriptures with you. The first one's going to be out of Matthew chapter 1, verse 23. Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is translated God with us. The second verse is out of John chapter 16, verse 33. These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation. So this morning, or yesterday morning, we went to church, and my preacher there at the Broken Arrow Baptist Church, he said there's over 8,800 promises in the Bible. And one of those promises I'm going to talk about today is that you'll have trials in your life, but according to that scripture of Matthew chapter 1, verse 23, that God is with us as we go through those trials. I mentioned prayers earlier, and then I believe that my grandmother and her sister Emma and my mother Rebecca had offered up a lot of prayers on my behalf, and that's why I've got to the point in my life where I'm at now. As I was growing up, I chose the wrong path. I was on that broad path, that wide gate I went through, and I started drinking alcohol, and it caused a lot of problems in my life. But I didn't listen. God, He was there. He doesn't abandon you when you're on that wide road. And I traveled it for a long time, and I had alcohol in my life. It caused a couple of accidents in vehicles that I destroyed. I totaled those vehicles, and one of those accidents that I did have, I was up by Ponca City, Oklahoma, and I was traveling east out of there on Highway 60. And I was going at a high rate of speed and traveling along, and next thing I know, I had a blowout. It caused my car to kind of swerve, and I ran off the road and hit the guardrail of a bridge. And as soon as I hit that guardrail, that truck started to tilt, and I knew that I needed to hang on. So I leaned over in that seat, and I grabbed that bench seat, and I hugged it. And when I did grab that seat, I could feel that truck starting to roll over. It rolled over a couple of times, and then all of a sudden it started to settle, and it settled on its wheels. So I just was kind of feeling my legs to make sure I was okay, and feeling my body and make sure I didn't have anything broken. And I was okay, so I got out of that vehicle and I started looking up that road and down that road, and there wasn't no traffic. Middle of the night, there's no traffic, and man, there I was. The motor wouldn't start, and it was cold, so I took off walking. I kind of recognized where I was at, and I took off walking through this field. I got about halfway through that field, and I got tired and cold. I was shivering, and so there was a group of trees over in this low spot in that field, and I walked over to there, and I laid down, and I told myself, I'm going to lay here and rest just for a little bit, and I'll get up and start going again. I know where I'm at. So I took off, and I laid down there, and I got cold, so there was a bunch of leaves from those trees laying on the ground, and I gathered them up, and I covered my body up with all those leaves, and it made me warm. And when you're warm from being cold, you go to sleep, and I went to sleep. That next morning, I woke up, and early. It was just getting daylight, and I woke up in the middle of the field, and I was, wow, where am I? Started looking around, and I could hear cars, and you could hear them going fast on that highway, and I knew that that wasn't the direction I wanted to go because I was headed to Pawnee. So I went over to the paved road, and it was the right road that I went to, and I walked on it for a couple miles, and no traffic at all. And finally, I'm walking along, and I could hear a car approaching from behind me, and lo and behold, it stopped. The guy driving, he rolled the window down. He said, "Where are you headed?" And I said, "I'm headed down to Pawnee." He said, "Well, where are you coming from?" I said, "Well, back that way. I was driving my truck and I had a blowout." He said, "Well, I just came through there and I didn't see a vehicle." I said, "Well, it's a little bit further east of the turnoff to come on this road. And there's a little bridge, and I had a blowout right there by that bridge." And he said, "Oh, okay, I know where that's at. I turned off before I got to that area." So he said, "Hop in and I'll give you a ride." And so we were riding along, and I knew I could still had that smell of alcohol in my breath, and I probably had it on my clothes, and I knew my eyes had to be red. And the guy was talking to me, and I knew he could smell it, and he started talking to me about alcohol. And then I said, "Well, who are you, and what do you do?" And he said, "I'm a preacher, and I'm headed to Pawnee to preach a sermon this morning in Pawnee." And I said, "Oh, okay." And about that time, we pulled up in front of my house there, and I told him, "Just pull over right here on the highway, and I'll hop out and walk on home." And so he did. He went on, and God was trying to wake me up. What are the chances of a preacher out in the middle of nowhere come along and pick you up and talk to you? I mean, on a Sunday morning, early, So, God sent a signal there, and I didn't listen. So I walked in the house there, and I talked to my parents, and I told them what happened. And so my mom, we got in the car, and after I cleaned up, took a shower, cleaned up, and got in the car, and we went back up to where the vehicle was. And as soon as we arrived, a state trooper was sitting there, and my truck was gone. So I got out of the car and I walked up and I told him I had that accident with that truck. And he said, "Go ahead and get in the car here." And so I had to get in and sit in the front seat with him. And he said, "I could tell you've been drinking because your eyes are still red. What happened last night?" I said, "Well, I had a couple of beers and I was driving down this road and I had a blowout." And he said, "I can see you had a blowout, but there's a long skid mark from on the road before you hit that bridge. How fast were you going?" I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "Well, you were going awfully fast because you lost control when you had a blowout. So I'm going to have to write you a citation." So I got a ticket, and I believe it was for excessive speed. I did ask them where they towed the vehicle to, and we went up there and talked to the tow company, and they said it'd be about a week, but they'd bring that truck back to my house. A week later, my dad was there, and I was off somewhere, and he talked to him, and they parked it in an area that we had a garden. He parked it in that area and just left it. And so, it sat there for a long time. And one day I was working with the tractor, cutting grass, and I finally realized, man, this thing's right in the way of this truck. So I walked in the house and I talked to my dad, and I said, "You want me to move that truck? It's right in the way, and I got that tractor going, and I can just lift it up and move it." And he said, No, just leave it where it's at. And I said, "Well, if we want to put a garden in, it's right in the middle of that garden that we used to have." And he said, No, leave it there, because every time you leave this house, I want you to see it, and I want you to realize what alcohol is doing to your life, that you need to change your ways." So it sat there a long time, and every time I'd leave that house, I'd see it because it was right there. And I didn't listen. After I had that accident, I got a bill in the mail, and it was they were charging me for that guardrail that I hit, and so I had to go talk to my insurance agent about that guardrail. I had to get it paid for. So I went to talk to the agent, and lo and behold, it's another preacher. It's my Uncle Dwayne. He was the insurance agents back then, and I had to go in there and talk to him about it. So he had a million questions. Where was you at? What was you doing? How fast were you going? You know, all these questions were for his paperwork that he had to fill out. But you know, he got on to me. You know, drinking it's going to ruin your life. You know, so God had sent another messenger to me to straighten my life out like that, and you know, I didn't listen. I was on that broad road, and I knew I needed to change, but I wasn't ready. In 1995, I come to realize that I had to change. You know, my son was born in 1993, and I realized that I needed to change my life and start providing for him and getting a roof over his head and feeding him and making sure he has clothes and then when he goes to school that he's ready. So in 1995, I got hired on as a police officer in Pawnee, Oklahoma, as a tribal police. You know, that's the last thing that I thought I'd be as growing up was a police officer. I remember riding with my older cousin Tom and John, and their mother was driving. We just left a store in Pawnee there. We headed north toward my house, and we all had pop, a bottle of pop. And back then it was a bottle. It wasn't these plastic things. It was a bottle. So Tom was sitting up there, and I looked up to him because he was older than me, and he was my cousin. And so he was sitting up there, and boy, he drank his pop and had that empty bottle. He just threw it out the window. So I was sitting in the back seat, saw that, and I drank mine, and I threw it out the window. And they dropped me off at the house there north of town, and I was walking around, and I got to thinking, you know, the Spirit was moving in me, you know. Why'd you do that? Why'd you throw some trash out? That bottle, it's got your fingerprints on there. You know, and I was thinking to myself, man, a police officer's going to come by, he's going to see that bottle sitting there, trash, and he's going to pull it up and look at it and going to lift my fingerprints off there. Man, I started looking down that driveway. Every once in a while, I'd look out that window and see and look and see if the police was coming yet. I worried about that for a long time when I was growing up. I worried like small stuff like that the Holy Spirit was moving in my life at an early age. I worked in Pawnee for several years. It was a total of 5 years as a police officer, and I tried to advance my career there. I think after 3 years, I tried out for the Highway Patrol, filled an application out, and I never did get a call. So that next year, I tried again, and you know, I got a call, and I got past the interview board, and they started doing the background. And then the last thing I heard was they done the background, and I didn't hear anything else. So I talked to a trooper there that I knew in Pawnee, and I said, "Can you check and see what happened with the background? Because I haven't heard anything else, and they're getting ready to start that academy." And so a couple of weeks later, he come back and he found me, and he said, "Yeah, I found out. You know, they interviewed someone here in Pawnee, and in that interview, that person said you drank a lot when you were younger, so they thought there was a potential that you might have an alcohol problem." And I looked at that trooper and I said, "I've worked in Pawnee here for 4 years now as a police officer, and I haven't drank beer. I haven't drank at all. You know, I take my job seriously, and are they going to hold that against me? Something I did when I was younger?" He said, "Yes, they will. They don't want to take a chance of you getting a patrol car and causing an accident because you're intoxicated." I said, "Man, you know, that's a consequence of alcohol." It held me back there for a while like that because I couldn't advance in my career. So a couple months later, there was a job opening in Miami, Oklahoma, and I didn't know it at the time, but God was blessing me. He was preparing me, you know. I applied for that job in Miami, Oklahoma as a federal police officer, and I got it, you know. And the salary, you know, it was this much here, and began to look at the paperwork that I filled out for Highway Patrol, and that salary was lower. And I read through there and I looked, and according to their salary scale, that it would take me 10 years as a Oklahoma Highway Patrol to get to that level that I started out as a federal officer. And I said, man, God is blessing me if I get this job. He's going to bless me right off the bat. You know, the troopers, they've got a pay raise now. You know, the entry level's just the same as a federal officer now, but back then it wasn't the same. So I did get that job in Miami, Oklahoma, and Shane, my son, moved up there with me. You know, and I straightened my life out, and I stayed on that narrow road. And you know, there's twists and turns, and you got trials and tribulations, but you know, it wasn't easy. But God said it's not going to be easy, but He'll be there with you. And He was there with me. And being a single parent, I had to find someone to babysit my son while I was at work. And being the new officer there in Miami, I had to work night shift. And I went to college up there, so I knew a family, and I referred to them as my second mother and my second father. And so they watched my son while I was working the night shift. And about 2 a.m, I'd get off work and I'd go over and pick my son up, and he'd sleepwalk out to the car and get in, and then I'd pull up in front of our house and he'd get out and he'd unlock the door and go on in. And I'd park the car and get it ready just in case I had to go back out again. And, you know, sometimes I would be able to go in, take a shower, and lay down and relax and go to sleep. But there's other times I would get a shower and lay down, and that pager would go off. And I'd have to get dressed right back up, get my uniform on, and wake Shane up and say, hey, you got to go. We go back over there. I've got to go out. I don't know how long I'm going to be out. So he'd get out of that warm bed and walk out in the cold and go back over to the babysitters. And then when I got done with that call, I'd go pick him up again. You know, it's hard. It was hard for me. You know, the narrow road's hard, and God was with us. And I believe those prayers that my grandmother, her sister, and my mother had placed up to God, and tried and asked Him to help me through my life. And I've got twists and turns, but God was there, and those prayers, they helped. You know, as a single parent, there was times I had to work. You know, I missed ball games of Shane's. There was events that I missed out on, and you know, but I took my job seriously. You know, and as I think back on those 25 years as a police officer, you know, I traveled to several reservations, and I realized that 90% of those calls that we did answer, and it didn't matter if it was a reservation in New Mexico or Montana, you know, 90% of the calls was alcohol related. You know, either there was a drunk, or there was a drunk driver, or there was a domestic involving alcohol. Someone in there was arguing, they were drunk and arguing with their spouse, you know. That was 90% of the calls, you know. And I was on that road. I could have been a statistic just like them, you know. The alcohol was in my life, and I didn't have any control over it, but I got off that broad road, and I got on that narrow path, and there are twists and turns, but and it's hard. But God was with me, and He helped me through those hard times. He was with me. So to summarize, I want to say that you've got to choose your path. You know, God's going to be with you. You know, He didn't promise that it's going to be easy, but He's going to promise you peace. You know, I live in a beautiful home in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. I'm a member of the Broken Arrow Baptist Church. I have my health. I have a beautiful family. And I have my career. You know, if you're on that broad road and you know you need to change, you know, contact Junior and talk to him about it, or get a hold of me, and I'll be glad to help you and talk to you and see if I can help you out and take care of that. You know, it's a whole lot better. You know, you're gonna rest easy at night. The conscience is gonna eat away at you. I when I was drinking, also I had another wreck, and I was driving along the roadway there, and I got too close to the edge there, and boom, I hit something, and I just kept on going. I got home. It was late. I got home and parked and went on into my room and went to sleep. Usually after being out all night, you'd sleep till late afternoon the next day, and not that day. I woke up when the sun was coming up, and I was laying there, man, why am I awake? And I realized that I hit something, so I got out and I went down outside and I looked at my car, and sure enough, that windshield was busted. Oh man, I hit that mailbox. So I went in and got dressed, and drove around and I found that house that I hit that mailbox, and I looked over there, and sure enough, that mailbox was gone. Boy, I just kept on going. I said, man, maybe they won't know it was me, and it wouldn't be hard to figure out. Busted windshield on that side of the road, and yeah, on that side of the windshield. So, yeah. So I went back home, and I thought about it, man. I said, man, that's going to be a federal charge. Destruction of mail property. I need to go make this right. And, I went over there and knocked on that door, and man, no one answered. And I got back in the car, and I was driving back home, and I was thinking, man, they're already uptown, reported to the police. So I worried about it. And about noon, I went back over there, and I knocked on that door, and a lady, older lady, she opened that door, and she said, may I help you? And I said, yes, I want to apologize to you, and I want to offer to fix your mailbox. That was me that knocked it off the post out there, and And she said, well, I really appreciate you coming by here and telling me that. I thought a vandal had come by and just knocked it off, but I was worried that they were going to do it again. And she said, but it really puts my mind at ease that you came by here and you were the one that done it. And it wasn't vandals. So I do have someone that's going to fix it. So you don't have to worry about doing that. And I offered again, I'll be glad to do it right now if you need me to. And she said, no, I've got someone and they're going to do it for me. But once again, thank you for coming by here. And so, that I left there, and I began to think, my conscience ate away at me like that, because I knew right from wrong, and if you're on that narrow road, and God's gonna give you peace at night where you can sleep and be rested, and you're not gonna have anything gnawing away at you. You'll be a better person. You have a healthy lifestyle. If you got worries and stress, it kind of hurts. It works at your heart and clogs up your blood vessels. So, you need to make sure that you take care of yourself like that. And once again, if you're having trouble and you think you're needing to change your life, get a hold of Junior, and he'd be glad to talk to you. And I'll be glad to talk to you if you want to get a hold of me. I want to thank Junior once again for giving me the opportunity to tell some of these stories in my testimony like that.